we will we'll start out with a roll call because I don't know if we have anyone online, but oh yeah, we will do the pledge first. Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now we'll do the roll call. There we go.
Okay, so again, this is just to check if there's anyone online, so everyone can hear each other. So Wendy.
Here.
Kristen.
Here.
David G.
Here.
Amy.
Here.
Tyler. You online by any chance? No. Christine.
Here.
Leslie.
Here.
Patricia.
Here.
Rebecca.
Here.
Sean.
Here.
Brian Tarbuck is not here. I'm going to just very quickly say he's at a Delta game, so don't feel bad for him in any way, shape, or form. Kelsey. Okay. David C.
Here.
Abigail.
Here.
And Wyatt is not here tonight, I'm assuming?
Yeah, he's racing.
Oh, he's okay. Answers that.
He's skiing.
Yeah,
Two
so-
people in nice places.
So based on nobody being here or speaking online, we can do all votes by show of hands.
All righty, we'll jump right into it. Sorry we were a little late. We had a meeting before it ran over. Presentation, student truancy in chronic absenteeism update. I didn't.
So, whoops, is this on? Yeah, okay. So this presentation, I've actually been giving you guys a little bit of information in board reports, but I kind of wanted to put it all together so that you guys can see. And also, if you have any questions around these topics, that you could potentially get them answered. Attendance sounds like it should be a very simple thing to deal with, but it's actually quite complicated, as you're going to see here. So I'm going to talk you through a few things first. So Diane, if you can go on to the next slide. And I'm going to try not to cough like I did the last time I did a presentation. So first off, we have to deal with, there is a law, and we also have a policy here in RSU 38 around compulsory attendance, which is very simple. It says persons 6 years of age or older and under 17 shall attend a public day school during the time it is in regular session. So again, we have policy JEA. I'm not going to pop that up right now, but you can certainly take a look at it. And it basically mirrors that law that's there in 5001-A around compulsory attendance. So the question that people ask and have the most concern about is, what does that mean for a student who's 5 years old? What that means is if a student is 5 years old and enrolled in school, then they count towards our attendance. If they are not signed up in school, meaning that they basically start in first grade rather than in pre-K or in kindergarten, then they simply don't count on our roll here at school, and they're not mandated to actually be in school. The key point is if they're enrolled, they have to come to school. They fall under this clause. That's just kind of the simplified way to think about it. If we go to the next slide now, so under compulsory attendance, we're going to talk about two things: truancy, and then we're going to talk about chronic absenteeism. So again, truancy has a lot of kind of layers to it. So the first one is a student is truant if the student has completed grade 6 and has the equivalent of 10 full days of unexcused absences or 7 consecutive school days of unexcused absences during a school year. So think that's basically grade 7 on up, okay? Seniors who turn 17, remember we have a Compulsory Education Act, even though they may not have graduated yet, they fall outside the scope of truancy, just so that you're kind of aware. Once you turn 17, the truancy law doesn't pertain to you anymore. So for example, if one of our steps is if a student is truant, we're actually calling DHHS. But if a student is 17 years old, we can't call DHHS because it's not mandatory that they be in school, even if they have not graduated. So that's like one little, on the far end of the spectrum, that's one little carrot that we really don't have any control over, unfortunately. So we do the best we can to try to bring those 17-year-olds in and get them to a point where they can graduate. And that's where like our dropout committee comes into play and those kinds of things. Guidance counselors will look at modified schedules and, you know, that kind of, there's a whole bunch of options that we can use with those particular students. So a student who is 6 years of age and has not completed grade 6 and has the equivalent of 7 full days of unexcused absence or 5 consecutive days during the school year. And again, this is all unexcused absences, and I'll talk about that, what that means in just a second. The little caveat that's at the end of this is if a student is enrolled in a public school, is at least 5 years of age and has not completed grade 6 and has the equivalent of 7 full days of unexcused absence or 5 consecutive days of unexcused absence during the school year. So again, this is where those pre-K students who might have just turned 5, this is where they fall into. So again, if you're enrolled, if you're 4 years old, we'd like you to come to school, but again, that's the other end of the spectrum that we don't have any legal leverage there. But if they've enrolled and turned 5, then they count towards our truancy count there. So again, we have a policy around truancy, and we'll take a closer look at that in just a second. Plus, this is all definition that comes directly from Maine law going forward. That's what our RSU 38 policies always mirror the law that's written there. So just so that you guys are aware. So, for example, when we go to the next slide and we look at what our truancy count is, we got it updated through January 1st. You'll notice that we list it out by month, and each month, if there's a new case, we'll plug that in and look at the total that we have at the end of the year. So for the month of December, we actually had no new truancies. So we have a grand total of 1 student that was considered truant in October in the middle school and 2 students at the high school that have shown up as truant, which is really, really good. And you guys have heard me say this before, Maranacook's attendance issues are not truancy based. It's the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the chronically absent. But it's important that you guys kind of know, what do we do with truancy here in RSU 38? And that's where policy JHB comes. It is laid out exactly what we must do. And this basically falls on the shoulders of the building principals to run this process through at each of the buildings. I'm not going to read it all to you. You guys can go take a look at it a little bit later on. Suffice it to say, it starts with the principal. There's a notification for due process that's included in there. Around the notification, they'll have a meeting. They'll set up a plan. If the parents and or student don't show up, we can still set up a plan and just notify them what the plan is. And then if it doesn't turn around, then it gets referred to the superintendent. From the superintendent, again, a due process, a meeting, and notification again to the parents, reviewing of the plans, etc. So this can kind of be a circular kind of process. The end result is that we can actually ask a police officer to do a summons, to give the family a summons for the student who might be truant. But again, we have a very long process that we have to go through, and we do have to follow due process, and there's timelines there. So if you miss a timeline for whatever reason, you're back at the beginning again, and you're starting this process all over again. And in the meantime, the student is getting less and less time in the classroom. And that's really the biggest problem going forward. So now, going to the next slide, is chronic, so I want to back up and say unexcused absences mean we have not heard from the parents or caregivers of that child. No communication whatsoever. That's when they get marked as unexcused absent. So again, we have zero parent communication. We don't know what's going on. They had a doctor's appointment, they had a dentist appointment, there was an event in the family on down the line. So next is the chronically absent students, and this is where our challenge lies. So again, the way this is defined is someone who misses 10% or more of their enrolled school days. So a very simple example of this is you take any absence the child has had, you divide it by the number of days that they have gone to school. So like in this example, they've only gone to school for 65 days. You don't divide it by 180 days or 175 days. You divide it by the number of days that they've actually been in school. So then you'll get a percentage, and that defines if they're more than 10%, they're considered chronically absent. We have 175 days in a calendar year. That basically means that any student that misses 18 or more days in the course of the year is going to be considered chronically absent. Okay, so 18 is kind of the magic number, but you also want to check as you're going along during the course of the school year where they are falling in terms of their absences. So that's why we do this calculation here. And again, the new law that came out, and I referenced it there, that went into effect this year, says that if your school and or district is more than 10% or more, then you are mandated to have an attendance review team. So in RSU 38, we're using our MTSS teams to review attendance data on a monthly basis. Some teams are doing it every 2 weeks. It just kind of depends on what their meeting looks like. But at the very minimum, they're looking at it monthly. And some of them actually have to look at it weekly, as you'll see here in just a second. Again, I referenced the law here. So when we post this online, if you want to go read the specifics of the law, you're certainly welcome to do that. Okay, next slide. This is the one we're going to cringe at. So remember at the January board meeting, I said even in December, I said we're trying to work on our data, get everything kind of figured out, make sure we have accurate data. So on December 1st, our pre-K-8 population was at 17% chronically absent. Our high school grades 9 through 12 were at 17.9%, almost 18% chronically absent. Then we were able to, remember December was a very short month because of the weather events, which makes the high school number kind of interesting to me. Notice that we bumped up against chronically absent in pre-K through 8. We jumped up a couple percentage points to 19.7. And then at the grades 9 through 12, we jumped up to 25.6. And I'm just going to put the caveat that I had to do a little mathematical work to get that number, but I think that's pretty close. It might be a smidgen lower or a smidgen higher, but I think it's pretty close. But it raises concerns like, why did this jump up in the month of December of all months? So we're doing this for the first time going through this data, so I don't have anything really to compare to. So through the course of the entire year, we're going to get our baseline number, and then that'll help us kind of look at what are the trends and what interventions should we be using. Now, something else I want you to think about when you're talking about chronically absent students, you have contact with the parents. Remember, unexcused can factor into this, but any absence that's there, minus absences where they are doing school events. Like, for example, some classes will have visit colleges for the day. They're still in school that day, just so that you guys are aware. So we're not taking those events that are during the school day and organized by the school. Students do not get penalized for those. So just want to be clear. Yeah, Sean.
How about like the trips we approve?
The same thing,
overseas?
yeah, the trips, field trips, et cetera, that we approve, those do not count in this at all. So by statute, these are the reasons up there that a student can be excused. So they have a personal illness. A lot of times when students start to get chronically absent, we ask for proof from a doctor saying that they went to visit a doctor, which is, you do that in your workplace as well. An appointment with a healthcare professional that's made during the regular school day, again, coming back with an appointment card. An observance, sorry guys, of a recognized religious holiday when the observance is required during a school day. And we do have students that do have different faiths, and that does happen. A family emergency, notice it's not defined, it just says a family emergency. A planned absence for a personal or educational purpose that has been approved. Usually families that go on trips will fill out a form, and the student will bring it to their teacher, and the principal and the family will communicate so that they know, like, the family left to go on vacation, and it's just they're kind of accounted for. But that's an excused absence, right? So going to the next one, this is the one that sometimes causes problems. If you can go to the next slide. In policy EBCE, which is school closures policy, this is the line verbatim from that. It says, when school is in session, it remains the responsibility of parents to decide whether or not their children shall attend school under the existing conditions. So if a parent calls and says they're just not coming to school today, it does count as an excused absence. We've heard from the parents, they're not coming to school, but the parent doesn't have to give us any more information than that, and we have to count it as excused. So just be aware that this line kind of ties our hands a little bit. However, having shown you all that information, I want you guys to know what we are doing to work with chronically absent. So we are working with Count Me In Maine. I put the website up there. Jess Anderson is one of the directors, and she is absolutely fabulous to work with. And I believe Wendy and Pat, was it Wendy and Pat that went to? Yeah, so you guys saw that already. She's fabulous. We're working with her, trying to come up with strategies and skills that'll work to try to bring students back in. Principals are the attendance coordinators in the building. So they are sitting at MTSS meetings and also reporting out on attendance so we can identify things sooner, identify our interventions, assign people, build relationships, those kinds of things. We have a family engagement committee that's working at the pre-K through 5 level, right? At this point, to work with specifically with the elementary age students. All of our MTSS teams in our buildings have part of their meetings at least once a month dedicated to looking at attendance and ways to help improve attendance. And then we've started doing a monthly data check, which I will report to the board now that we've got all the kind of kinks worked out. I'll be able to report more regularly on as far as how chronically absent students, what our percentage looks like going forward across the various levels of this initiative. We know that attendance and raising attendance is not something that's going to be done in just a single year. It's probably going to be a long haul where we build our interventions up and find out what works and what doesn't work to increase student attendance. I was talking to someone today, and I had mentioned that we tend to have truancy seem to jump up during the months of February, March, and April, which is kind of that very intense school time. And the person rightly pointed it out and said, but maybe that's not truant. Maybe those are chronically absent students that just got recorded as truant. So we might have less truant students, which I believe, and have more chronically absent, and we have to work around that and have more conversations around it. There's lots and lots of information out there, so we're doing our best to bring everyone's attention to this, report it out at the board level, and make it a priority. As you guys will remember, that was part of one of our goals this year, was to take a look at attendance, and I expect that's one that's going to carry over for at least a couple of years until we get attendance to a place where we don't have 25%, 17 or 25% chronically absent. We definitely want to bring that number down and make that a much more manageable number, because as you guys know through research, students that are chronically absent tend to do very poorly as they progress through school. So it starts at the elementary level and it just gets worse as they go forward. So that's one of the reasons why the Family Engagement Committee is so very important at the elementary level, is for that reason. So. All right, I'm going to stop there. Can I answer any questions? I have a couple of principals here too, so if you have any, if I can't answer, I'll pull them up here. Go ahead, Sean, of course.
I'll start. How did like students who aren't truant but who are absent, like either a planned absence or,
Yeah.
and this is a pretty big question. So, or I think it, like, how does that equate to them doing their work or not doing their work versus truant? I mean, how does that work with students getting their work if they go on vacation with mom and dad to Disney World for 10 days, which I know happens, or a kid goes away for 3 days to go to a hockey tournament, which I know happens. So how does that work? I know we try our best, and you know, as parents, but how does that equate?
So the general rule, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the number of days the student is out for those like planned absences is the amount of time that they're allowed to be able to make up the work and get the work passed into the teachers. Some teachers will extend that based on whatever the situation is and what's going on in class and stuff like that. So for example, if you miss 3 days for a hockey tournament, you would actually have 3 days to make up that work. Some teachers will try to get, if it's possible, will get the work to them ahead of time. Sometimes it's just when they get back, they pick it up. The important thing to remember from all of that is that that doesn't take place of what actually happens in the classroom. My wife's a teacher, and she says all the time, like, I can't replicate that with worksheets, because people will say, just give me a worksheet. I can't replicate that on a worksheet, what they've missed in class. So there are mechanisms, teachers work with them. Usually the principals are aware, especially of like those planned absences, especially principals are aware, and we'll work with that and keep an eye on that as well. Does that answer your question, Sean? It's kind of a vague. Yeah, good.
All my others go.
Go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Annie. I'll be quick. So thinking about the high percentage for the high school students being 25%, and seeing that that necessitates the attendance review team or the MTSS team to meet, are they required to meet at certain intervals, or is it just once and then they develop a plan, or is it?
It kind of is situational, because sometimes we know what's going on and we say, yeah, they were, you know, I'm going to say they were out for surgery, an elective surgery or a mandated surgery. So that's an easy one to kind of work with. So it's a little situational in terms of the students. Some students do require a plan to be able to kind of get back on track. The interventionists will help out with that and stuff. Teachers will help out with that. Our teachers are phenomenal when it comes to giving support to students like that. So so it's kind of situational, if that's okay for me to say that.
Makes sense, thank you.
Wendy?
I had a question on the report cards and everything. Where does tardy and unexcused absences fall in? Because as a parent, I've called in
Yeah,
and maybe this child, one of my children has lost the slip from the doctor by the time he or she gets back to school, and it's unexcused. So where does the tardy and the unexcused come in then?
so tardy just means you're late for school, and that can range anywhere from a few minutes to several hours, obviously. And it's just a designation saying that they were late for school. There's really not any kind of teeth behind that, although some schools do have kind of, they'll say, well, you missed first period, so you're going to have to get back to that teacher and find out what you missed during first period, kind of thing. And I will say, if you ever lose a note, just call the school and say, the note got lost. This is, I was with him, he was there, and it's unexcused. You're not going to get questioned any further than that. Yeah,
That's
just so
good
you
to
know.
know.
Yeah.
I always took the
Yeah.
unexcused. Okay.
I will
There's
say
no teeth to it though.
yeah, there is no teeth to it.
It all
You're right.
goes in the same pot, is what I'm
Yes,
saying, even though
yes.
on the report cards it
Right.
says tardy, unexcused, excused.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's all going into the same pot. That's a good way to say that.
David?
I've long had a question on the report of the truancy that we get regularly. It says, one new one in this
Yep.
school, one new one in that school. I'm wondering if there's a way to put in what the accumulated total is.
Yeah, if you get to the last column, that will always be like a total for the year. But like each month will be like whoever's new that month, but the total is an accumulation for the year up to that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, so there was one new this month.
Yeah.
Are there any still lingering that are still truant this month?
Yeah, I will say, yeah, so I will say to you, when a student is identified as truant, it's a continuous process. And now they're on somebody's radar and they're watched and the plans, modified based on how things are doing. If a student totally turns around, then they can actually get off the plan. Other students, you have to continue to modify the plan until you find out what works. So yeah, you might see one in October, but in all likelihood, the principal and or guidance counselors and or teachers are still working with that student. But the thing is, they're on the radar now and they're coming to school, and that's the important piece.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the new because that's someone that has just shown up.
Yeah.
But to me, it would be, I know the administration is keeping track of it and the teachers, but especially if I'm even on the committee, well, we only meet once a year, so
Yes.
I have no idea the rest of the year whether we've got 5 students, the one new one, and 5 that are
They're still outstanding.
process,
Yeah.
or did 2 of those
Yeah.
drop off,
Yeah.
so that's, we're down to 3 plus the new person.
I will actually talk with Michelle, the high school principal, about that. And I'll see if we can figure something out as a way to be able to do that. So that way, when you get to that meeting, you have more accurate, more longitudinal data to be able to look at. So I think that's a good
Thank you. I don't
suggestion.
mean to make more
Yeah.
paperwork, I know that.
No,
was
I
my
think,
job,
I
more
think it's
paperwork.
easy to do. I think we can come up with a system to
Okay,
do
thank
that.
you.
So I just need to work with the principal. So. Leslie, I think you're next.
Yeah, and I'll apologize if I'm kind of maybe going to ask what David asked, but from truancy recovery, like they will recover. So someone who may, if I'm hearing you correctly, there's a formalized sort of plan that goes active for a student to try to get them back to school. So does the program sort of have a beginning and an end so that they can be considered recovered from
Yes.
truancy and be able to have statistics around showing the success of like those
Yeah.
programs
Yeah.
and that students came back and they, because they had a start and an end to the program,
Right,
it's
Yeah.
viewed as they were recovered. Whether
Yeah.
it were to happen again, I don't know if
right.
it's something that happens,
Yeah.
but they show up
Yeah.
as a new data point, or
Yeah.
do they show up as
An old data
A
point that's
recurred
recurring,
truant.
right? Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's, I think, I think you two are connected, and that's what I want to delve into. I'm not going to pretend to have an answer to that. A lot of the plans are written with like in the next 3 weeks, you'll do this. And then there's a check-in or, you know, whatever it happens to be. But there's usually some sort of check-in point and or like release point too. So that's a good point. For state reporting though, once a student is truant, they're listed as truant in the state reporting that we have to do. But the important piece is getting them back to school. So if they're back at school and coming on a regular basis, then yay.
So, right, so even if once they ring the bell,
Right,
they become a data point.
right,
But being
exactly.
able to have an additional data point that lets us know how many we successfully recovered
Yes,
would be good because it would help to offset
yes.
and reflect on the work that you guys do to get them.
No, absolutely. And that's what I want to try to figure out. That's, yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
No. Yeah, I think that's great, because I was wondering, like, there was a one,
Yeah.
is that one student still truant, or are they
Right. Or have they
successfully
recovered?
back?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's an excellent point.
Because it's good to
Yeah.
tell success stories.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Any more questions?
Darren,
Oh, Gary,
you got to come up to the microphone.
so we can hear you.
So that's where the chronically absent tracking that we're doing will play in. So if that student, once they're truant, they've missed those days, they're defined as students for the year. But if they're not being successful, then that's going to show up in the chronically absent data anyway. So we're constantly going to, it'll show up in the chronically absent, but not if they're still missing a lot.
So again, as we close the presentation, I'll just offer, if you want any more information, have any questions, especially after you look at something that sounds so simple, but it's actually so complicated when you have to kind of put all of the pieces together and make sure you're doing what you need to get students to school and be successful at school. That's the end goal right there, so.
And to me, it all plays hand in hand to, like, a couple meetings ago, when we were looking at the test scores, we have 17% of students missing school, how are they gonna be successful? So it's all an interweb. And I think we gotta keep that in mind when we're looking at those scores too in the future. All right, citizens' comments?
Marianne, do we have anyone online that's interested?
None? Additions, adjustments to the agenda by the board or the superintendent?
I do not have any today.
All right, none. Any board members? All righty, move right along to the action items. Approval of RSU 38 board meeting minutes of January 3rd, 2024.
I move we approve of RSU 38 board meeting minutes of January 3rd, 2024.
Second.
All right, have been moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, call for a vote. We can do it by show of hands. All right, I think it's unanimous.
Oh, was that
No.
Abigail?
Oh, Abigail.
I wasn't there.
Sorry, Abigail.
So abstaining, Abigail?
She wasn't there. Cool, cool. Not resignation. That was something else. Ratification of first probationary contract teacher, elementary music.
I move that we ratify the first probationary contract teacher elementary music.
Second.
All right, haven't been moved and seconded. Discussion?
So as you're looking at that, everyone's very excited to finally have another music teacher, which is really, really good news. But I'm also going to point out that she actually works in another district at the good notice, so she won't be here until after April vacation. So, but we'll take her. We'll take her. So I just wanted to be honest with you guys about that.
It's good to thank you, but it's exciting because this has been a long time in the works. So, all right, we'll call for a vote. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now resignation. Acceptance of resignation of school psychologist effective June 2024, Suzanne Gardner. Having been moved in, seconded, discussion? There was a email in our folder, just so you know. Yep, Christine.
I know we can't discuss personnel matters, and we can't ask reasons why, but I am glad that we have a psychologist resigning, those are very important to fill, so.
Yesterday.
Yeah, we actually have an ad ready to go, that was out tomorrow morning, right after you guys vote.
Is that why she resigned so early? To give you
Yes,
time?
yes, she did that to help us out as a school district in finding a replacement.
That was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, oh no, she's very good, she's definitely going to be missed, she was very good.
The email in your folder I thought was very nice, so I encourage you to read it.
Yes.
Any other discussion? All right, we will definitely miss her and we will call for a vote. All right, unanimous, thank you. Consideration of request for 3-week leave of absence, Michelle Fay, January 29th to February 16, 2024.
I move that we approve the request for a 3-week leave of absence for Michelle Fay, January 29th to February 16th, 2024.
Second.
Haven't been moved in second, discussion? All right, we will call for a vote. It's unanimous. Okay, annual approval of comprehensive emergency plan.
So that's this. We still have work to do, but we wanted to bring forth what we had up to this point, so that we had it on record for the remainder of the school year. But we are working with our new SRO, who's already had a pretty big impact on this as well. So, there's plenty of work to do though. We are kind of catching up to where we need to be, but we figured we probably should bring it forward. And again, this is confidential, but you're more than willing to take a look at it as a board member. Can't bring it home though.
Leslie, pull up your chair. No. All right, we need a motion.
I move that we approve approval of the comprehensive emergency plan.
Second.
All right, haven't been moved in second, discussion? Dude?
No, I voted.
Okay, we will move to a vote. It looks unanimous. Yep, it is. Right, unanimous. Policy second readings. Second readings. We go, right? Okay, let's make sure. CBD, superintendent contract and DLCA district credit cards. So we're voting on these, so we need a motion. Yep, we can, yep, we can.
I move that we approve the second readings of CBD superintendent contract and DLCA district credit card.
Second.
Haven't been moved in second, discussion. All right, seeing no discussion, we will move to a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. Budget workshop. We're already at that time of year. All right, Jay, goal setting?
On page 10 and 13 is the, last approximately, 5 or 6 years of our, goal setting. These are the statements that we've used. So normally what we do, especially for those people that are new to us, is the first thing we'll do is come up with a goal, before we jump into the budget actual workshop pieces. We kind of set what our goal is going forward for this budget cycle. And as you can see from, there are years where it actually carries over. The board likes the wording and they just carry it over from year to year. So the last change was in 22-23. So kind of open the floor up if that's okay with
Yeah, let's open it up.
Roderick, that it's open. What would you guys like for a goal?
I like the one we got, but
I can read the one, so everyone. It's to balance the needs of all members of the RSU 38 school community and to promote student success in all areas while maintaining fiscal responsibility.
I
Anyone
feel
have
like
any,
we did a lot of work last year on this, and
Yeah,
so
went
I
back
think
and
it's a good one.
anyone have any edits or changes on that? All right, I don't think we need a formal vote, but we good?
Yep.
All right, we're good with the goal setting part of it. Now B is superintendent's directives.
So I've got a little slideshow for you. Sorry.
Sideshow.
Tonight, the slideshow. So this is an overview presentation. Over the course of the next several meetings, we'll look at the timeline here in just a couple minutes. We will basically be talking budget from now and basically until April vacation. We'll be talking budget. So I like to preface what we're doing by putting some information in front of you guys. And again, this will get posted online. What my administrative team will do is they will continue to add to this slideshow, so it'll all be put together at the end, so that way if you have any questions or anything you want to review, you'll be able to see all the presentations at the end. So this very first one, and Diane, if you can go to the next slide, we'll put the new goal here so that it's always at the front of our discussions going forward. You guys just voted on that, so that'll get added in. What we're going to do is talk about enrollment and staffing, my directives to the principals and the directors, and then we'll look at the process and timeline review, which is on page 13 in your board packet tonight. All right, so wanted to give you guys an idea, and especially for those people who are new to the budget, one of the things that's really important that you understand is that there's a document that's going to come out called the EDU 279, which is the state's share of funding for our district. And when that comes out, I will be sharing that with you guys. It's their requirement by statute, I think, is to have it out by the end of January. Sometimes they hit that, sometimes they don't. But as soon as I have it, I will be sharing it with you and we will have some conversations around that. The money that gets allocated to us is based on October 1's student counts. So each month our principals put in their reports what they have for grade levels for student enrollment. That can go up, that can go down. So in the state's infinite wisdom around the budgeting process, they look at October 1st as being the day that you kind of lock in, this is your enrollment, and this is the number that we will use to calculate your allotment based on October 1st. Why October 1st, I don't know. It was done way before me. So I'd just like you guys to see where we are. So October 1st, this year, we had 1,189 students. Last year on October 1st, we had 1,206 students, a difference of 17 students, which is about 1.5%. But remember that 1.5% translates to money. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're moving forward. The more students you have, the better it is for your allocation. The fewer students you have, obviously your allocation is going to change. I also like to show what's going on with homeschooling students because we don't get any funds for homeschooled students. So this year, we had 45. Last year, we had 48. So we've actually had 3 students that have come back to us. That's somewhere along the line when you're looking at enrollments there. But again, there's 45 students that could count towards our 1,189 students that we can't do that. We don't get to count them. So that hurts us. That's a sizable chunk of money going forward. So just something to be aware of as we go forward. We do have in-district transfers. Oh, not too fast. We do have in-district transfers, and we had 6 new ones this year. And that's only elementary schools. So those are students that live in one town, but for whatever reason are now going to another school. And we had 6 new ones this year. Those, once they're done, or once they put in the request for that, unless they ask to go back to their home school, they usually stay there. So that's why I just put there's 6 new ones. And again, it's just something for you guys to be aware of going forward. Superintendent agreements. This is, I've been here for 6 years, and this is the first time in 6 years that we actually have more students going out of district than coming in. So we had 34 students from somewhere else, that don't live in RSU 38, that are coming here. So Winthrop, Spruce Mountain, Halldale, Augusta. So we have students that are coming from there on a superintendent agreement. And again, we get to count these students in the funding formula because they're attending here. So, but again, it is interesting to see that this is the first time in my time here that we've actually had more going out than coming in. Usually it's the other way around. So it might be a new trend, I'm not sure. And then we've got tuition students, and a lot of these are Fayette students for the most part that are tuitioned into our school. The majority of these are Fayette. So going forward from that, these do not count. They don't get included in our subsidy count though, okay? Because we're actually getting a tuition check, or not monthly, but quarterly from Fayette for these students. So just so that you're kind of aware of what's going on there. So that's the enrollment side of things. I want you guys to see staffing where I've kind of directed my administrative team to take a look at is as we're looking to staff schools for next year, what we're using in the elementary schools for grade K to 2 is a max size of 21. Classes beyond 22 will be evaluated for a need for a split. So just because a class size hits 22 doesn't mean we're automatically going to split them 11 and 11 and hire another teacher. We're actually going to look at the group of students, and we're going to look at the skills of the teacher and the needs of the students to kind of make that decision collaboratively, and that would be done with the teacher, the principal, and then myself and Mandy included, because usually there's a budgetary cost to that. So grades 3 through 5, we have a max size of 24. And again, if a class hits 25, we're going to evaluate that at that point on a case-by-case basis. The middle school class size of 20 to 25, that's actually in the classroom. But that means that their team sizes are anywhere from 80 to 100. And I know they've got a team of 2 this year. So that number is actually a little bit lower. And I'm not going to cloud things up too much, but that we did, Rick did that to bring the numbers down in the classroom a little bit going into this year. So we'll take a look at that as we continue on. And at the high school, there's a variety of classes offered, but we ask that there be a minimum of 10 students in a class. That for the most part, they do very well at doing that. There are students that will drop classes, and that sometimes the number will drop to 8 or 9, but that may be 2 or 3 weeks in, and it doesn't feel right to punish the other students because it, that kind of thing. So we kind of use our common sense when it comes to that. But we really look at the beginning to try to make sure we're 10 or more in a class to be able to say we're running that class at the high school. Pre-K, this is also very important for you guys to know. Reedfield Elementary School has 2 sessions, 16, up to 16 students per session. We have, because it's 16, we need to have an ed tech in the classroom with the teacher. So that's why the cap is 16, because that's legally all we can have in the room. The important thing for you guys to know is Wayne pre-K students attend pre-K in Reedfield, then go back in kindergarten to Wayne Elementary School. So just again, so if you don't know that, you're aware of it. Manchester Elementary School has 2 sessions. Their numbers jumped up a little bit. The AM is capped at 8 students and there's 1 teacher. But we do have an ed tech that comes over in the afternoon, so they could have a max capacity of 16. And I don't, Abby, what's your number at right now? Do you know off the top of your head? Yeah. 14. So that's typically what happens, and that's why we did that. So that ed tech is actually shared with Mount Vernon. They have 1 session in the morning only. They have a cap of 16. So the ed tech works there in the morning and then goes to Manchester in the afternoon for those bigger classes. So again, just so that you're kind of aware of how does pre-K work and how is that all structured. All right, next slide. There's a lot of information on this slide. I'm gonna try to do this in a nutshell as quick as I can. So every school, all 6 of our schools have a regular ed tech. There's 1 per school, and that ed tech is used at the discretion of the administrator, usually in consultation with interventionists, the MTSS team, et cetera, et cetera. But they have 1 that they basically can move around to suit the needs of whatever's happening in their school. Guidance, we have 6 total guidance counselors, 2 at the 2 at the high school, 1 at the middle school, 3 at the elementary schools at this time. Nursing, we have 5, again, 1 at the high school, 1 at the middle school, and 3 elementary school nurses. The nurse that works, and I should back up, the nurse that works at Mount Vernon and Wayne's, she splits her time between those 2 schools. So she moves between the 2 schools. And the guidance, the same way Tara Wicks is the guidance counselor, she moves between Wayne and Mount Vernon. The others are assigned a specific building. So just so that you kind of know, and we kind of shored that up a little bit last year. Library, we have one teacher, or I should say 1 designated librarian that splits her time between half-time at the high school, half-time at the middle school. I'll be honest in saying she spends more time at the high school than she does at the middle school, but that's because we have an ed tech that works at the middle school that can support her and keeps the library running. And then we have 1.6 ed techs for the elementary school librarian. So I actually have to back up and say there's 1 elementary librarian and then 1.6, which equates to basically 2 people that work part-time as an ed tech to be able to support the libraries in our elementary schools. Music, 1 at the high school, 1 at the middle school, and 1.5 at the elementary school. PE, we have 1 at the high, excuse me, that should be 2 at the high school, right? So 1 at the high school, 1 at the middle school, 1.2 at the elementary school. We have 1 part-time person that's not working 1 day a week. So that way, the other elementary team does the other school. Going forward, first we got 3.86, a little odd. We have 1.66 at high school, full-time and part-time 1 at the middle school, and again. It's the cold. There we go. So the music, where was I? Music, PE, art, 1.2 at the elementary school. GT, we have 2.75, 0.3 at the high school, almost 1 full one at the middle school, and then 1.5 at the elementary schools. Health, we have 1 high school health teacher and 1 middle school teacher. We don't have anyone designated as an elementary health teacher though. And then technology, we've got 3 integrationists, 1 at the high school, 1 at the middle school, 1 at the elementary school. We have 1 ed tech at the high school, a half-time one at the middle school, and we have 2 at the elementary school. And it's worth noting those 2 at the elementary school actually run classes at the elementary level. So just so you know that. We also have 1 network manager and 0.8 or 4 out of 5 days a week technology support technician for hardware and software. So that's kind of what the staffing looks like. Notice that I did not put special ed up here. I will let Ryan do that when he gets here. He will talk about his staffing going forward. Okay, so that's staffing. So here are the directives. I usually give the principals the directives at the beginning of December, and they will work on their budget, usually through December, even through the holidays, and even sometimes after the holidays, because there is a lot to it. What I asked them to try to do was look at their overall spending and stay between 2 and 3% from last year. So that's kind of our target. Increase over the budget is somewhere between 2 and 3%. We want to make sure that we increase transparency and equity of spending practices. So instructional line spending based on students in a building with additional allocations for Title I schools, and that's Mount Vernon Elementary School, Wayne Elementary School, and Reedfield Elementary School, and Tier 3 schools. And again, we have 2 of those with Mount Vernon and Wayne. So all of those schools get a little additional money because of those designations. And then again, we want to pretty much reduce elimination of wish list budgeting. Those of you guys that have seen this presentation before, I say that every year, and my principals are really good at kind of looking at what do I absolutely need, what are some things that we want to think about potentially for the future, can live without them, but put this on your radar, Jay, because eventually we're going to have to talk about it at some point. But they're very good at kind of meeting this directive going forward, and it's not easy. It can be very challenging when you're looking at your budget and what you've got going on in schools. So again, we have to use the October 1st state attendance report. So that's what they're allocated, is based on those October. So like, for example, I think Abby had 168 in her last report, but it's actually 166 on the October report. So she has to budget based on 166 students, even though she might have 168 students right now. So that can be a little bit of a challenge too, and that's what stretches your budget sometimes. So I asked the principals to kind of use these guidelines, $200 per student for curriculum supplies, books, and classroom furniture, $50 per student for the Title I schools, as I mentioned, and $25 per student for a Tier 3 school. And then we started doing this last year or 2 years ago, where if we initiate a district-initiated curriculum and we need materials, we will kind of help the principals with that budget for it proportionately across the schools. So not one school is getting hit with some, astronomical fee. So we try to do it as proportionally as we can, and it's added into their budget right at the get-go. We don't at this point have anything big like that this year, but just wanted you guys to know that that's kind of the way we're handling it. Then, of course, something that is a hallmark for Maranacook is their staff professional development. So we have asked the principals to budget based on their staff count, $200 per staff, but it has to include registration, travel, and expenses. This is not coursework. So if they're taking a class at UMF, that's not part of that. That's a different pot of money that we use. Budget requests can be submitted for large group conferences through the budgeting process. So if there's a big conference coming up that they know about that is going to cost them a little bit more, they can actually put it through as a new budget request. So that way you guys are aware of what they're doing, and you guys get to approve that final request. Principals will have control of the money and should develop protocols tied to school goals on how to use that PD money. And again, the principals do a really good job with this. And then administrative principal lines should include the following: professional dues and fees, conferences, webinars, and of course, coursework. We do a lot of educational pieces for our administrators with Drummond and Woodson, who do a lot of webinars on various topics that they'll attend at various points during the year and stuff. So we, again, try to proportionately cut that across. It's actually it's very manageable doing that with them. All right, I'm trying to get through this quick for you guys. So our next steps as to where we're going, Director of Finance, which is Mandy, who's up at the table for the first time this school year. She is rolling over the budget and inputting the requests now. We will be spending some time next week together reviewing all the department budgets. I've been looking, they're shared with me, so I've been looking at them. Mandy and I have been having conversations, but we don't like just start axing things. We will look at it together, then we'll meet with the principals and talk about how to manage that. So we will meet with the principals and the directors as we go forward, looking at what initial requests are going to stay in the budget coming forward and which ones are like, Jay, put it on your radar. I know it's not going to go through, but put it on your radar because I'm going to ask for it again, which is part of it. Then the principals will actually be your next presentation that you'll see on February 7th. They will be sharing with you their new requests. They're not going to go over the budget line by line, but what they'll do is share any new requests that they're making. If it's staying kind of status quo, then they'll tell you it's staying status quo and they're not looking for anything new or different that's going to add to the budget. So just so that you guys are kind of aware of that. So based on the information I just showed, any questions? That's a lot of information. So this will be posted online so you can go back and review it, because I know I went through that like a buzzsaw. So, all right. Then,
All right, now it's board discussion on any of that.
so I will just point out to everyone on page 13, 7C, that's the budget timeline that we put together so that you know what presentations are coming. So each department, the principals will be there. Then we'll have, each department will share what they're working on with their budget going forward. So again, like March 6th, just looking at that one quickly, that's special education. Brian will be here specifically to talk about the special education budget and what that looks like. Sean will be here for operations and maintenance, and then I'll review anything outstanding from our COVID funds as we're wrapping those up, because those have to be spent by September 30th. So I'm not going to read that all to you. Just notice down at the bottom, May 8th is the annual meeting. It will be in here, and that's the one where you guys, where the public can come, and we were on the stage last year for those of you that were here and stuff. So just so that you're kind of aware of that. That's the big day, and then it goes to budget referendum or validation referendum on June 11th. Any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Certainly willing to talk about any of that. And again, we record all these presentations and put them online, so they're hopefully as transparent as we can be going forward with that. All right, turn back over to Sean.
All right, no, great. Any discussion about any of that or any questions? I know there was a lot at once.
All done with the QR code.
Diane's the one that talked on it, doing that, just saying.
Good job.
It's awesome. All right, seeing none, I don't see any citizens, unless there's some online. All right, well, now we're gonna move into executive session.
I move we enter executive session to consider negotiations between RSU 38 Board of Directors and the Marana Area School Staff Association pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405B.
All right, have been moving second, call for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous, all right, we're gonna go into executive session.
Oh, okay, got one.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous.
Yes.